The acrid stench of ozone and burnt circuitry filled Kira's nostrils as she materialized in a grimy alley. Neon signs flickered overhead, casting an eerie glow on the rain-slicked pavement. She blinked, adjusting to the sudden shift from the sterile white of Kronos HQ to the gritty underbelly of Neo-Tokyo, circa 2089. A rat scurried past her feet, disappearing into a pile of discarded synth food containers. Kira wrinkled her nose, the sweet, sour smell of decay mingling with the ever-present smog. She tapped her wristcom, bringing up a holographic display of her target's last known coordinates. "Riven, you sneaky bastard," she muttered, her eyes narrowing as she studied the pulsing red dot on the map. "What are you up to this time?" Kira had known Riven Blackthorne for years. They'd trained together, risen through the ranks of the Time Travel Enforcement Agency side by side. He'd been her partner, her friend, and for a brief, ill-advised moment, her lover. Now, he was her prey. The sound of hover cars whooshing overhead mixed with the distant thrum of bass from a nearby club. Kira pulled her nanofiber jacket tighter around her shoulders, more out of habit than necessity. The smart fabric adjusted to her body temperature, keeping her comfortable despite the chilly drizzle. She moved out of the alley, blending seamlessly with the crowd on the neon-lit street. Augmented reality adverts assaulted her senses, promising everything from instant mood adjustments to black market organ upgrades. Kira's internal filters, courtesy of TTA Tech, screened out the worst of it. Her wristcom vibrated, a message scrolling across the holographic display. "Target acquired. Proceed with caution. Temporal anomalies detected in vicinity." Kira's pulse quickened. Temporal anomalies meant Riven was messing with the timeline, and that never ended well. She quickened her pace, shouldering past a group of giggling teenagers with glowing tattoos and iridescent hair. The coordinates led her to a rundown apartment complex, its facade a patchwork of crumbling concrete and hastily applied smart paint. Kira slipped inside, her footsteps echoing in the empty lobby. The elevator was out of order, so she took the stairs, her hand hovering near the temporal disruptor holstered at her hip. As she climbed, memories of Riven flooded her mind. His cocky grin, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about the potential of time travel. "Think about it, Kay," he'd said once during a late-night stakeout in ancient Rome. "We could fix everything. No more wars, no more famines. We could make the world perfect." Shed shut him down, of course. That kind of talk was dangerous, the first step on a slippery slope that led to chrono-terrorism. But a small part of her had wondered, what if? Kira shook off the memories as she reached the 5th floor. The corridor stretched before her, flickering light panels casting strange shadows on the peeling wallpaper. She moved silently, years of training kicking in as she approached apartment 5C. The door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the hallway. Kira drew her disruptor, its familiar weight comforting in her hand. She took a deep breath, centering herself, then pushed the door open with her foot. The apartment was a mess of tangled wires and humming machinery. Holographic displays covered every available surface, showing timelines that branched and merged in dizzying patterns. In the center of it all stood Riven, his back to the door as he manipulated a complex 3D model of what looked like ancient Egypt. "Hello, Kira," he said without turning around. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Kira kept her disruptor trained on him as she edged into the room. "Step away from the console, Riven. It's over." He chuckled, a sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "Okay, it's only just beginning." Riven turned to face her, and Kira's breath caught in her throat. His eyes, once a warm brown, now glowed with an unnatural blue light. Cybernetic implants snaked across his temples, pulsing with energy. "What have you done to yourself?" Kira whispered, horror and pity warring in her chest. Riven grinned, and it was all wrong, too wide, too sharp. "I've evolved, Kay, merged with the time stream itself. I can see everything now, every possibility, every outcome, and I'm going to fix it all." Kira's finger tightened on the trigger of her disruptor. "You know I can't let you do that, Riven. Messing with the timeline, it's too dangerous. You could unravel reality itself." "Or I could save it," Riven countered, spreading his arms wide. "Think about it, Kira. No more suffering, no more pain. A perfect world crafted by my hand." For a moment, Kira hesitated. The offer was tempting, a siren song of utopia, but then she remembered her training, the countless simulations showing how even the smallest changes could snowball into catastrophe. "I'm sorry, Riven," she said, her voice steady despite the ache in her heart. "But I can't let you play God." She fired, the temporal disruptor sending a pulse of chrono energy towards Riven. But he was faster, impossibly so. He flickered, seeming to exist in multiple places at once, and the shot passed harmlessly through empty air. "Oh, Kira," Riven's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "You really should have joined me." The room exploded into chaos. Timelines twisted and warped, reality itself seeming to bend around them. Kira ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding a tendril of pure temporal energy that left a scorched mark on the wall behind her. She came up firing, her disruptor spitting bolts of chrono energy in rapid succession. Riven danced between them, each movement leaving a ghostly afterimage in its wake. He was toying with her, Kira realized with a sinking feeling. Whatever he'd done to himself, it had made him more than human. "Give it up, Kay," Riven called, his voice distorted as if coming from multiple timelines at once. "You can't stop the inevitable. The future is mine to shape." Kira gritted her teeth, her mind racing. She couldn't beat him in a straight fight, not like this, but maybe. She dove for the console Riven had been working on, her fingers flying over the holographic controls. If she could just disrupt his connection to the time stream. Riven realized what she was doing a moment too late. "No!" he roared, lunging towards her with inhuman speed. Kira slammed her hand down on the final command, and the world went white. When her vision cleared, she found herself back in the alley where she'd first materialized. The neon sign still flickered, the rain still fell, but something was different. The air felt cleaner somehow. The oppressive weight of Neo-Tokyo smog lifted ever so slightly. Her wrist comm buzzed, and Kira looked down to see a message from Kronos HQ. "Mission successful. Timeline stabilized. Return for debriefing." Kira let out a shaky breath, relief washing over her. She'd done it. She'd stopped Riven, at least for now. But as she prepared to activate her return beacon, a nagging doubt crept into her mind. Had she really won? Or had she just delayed the inevitable? The thought haunted her as she dematerialized, leaving behind a world that would never know how close it had come to being unmade. Back at Kronos HQ, Kira stood before the Temporal Council, her posture rigid as she delivered her report. The 7 members of the council, their faces obscured by shimmering chrono fields, listened in silence. "And that's when I initiated the emergency protocol," Kira concluded. "It severed Riven's connection to the time stream and reset the local area to its proper state. However, I was unable to apprehend the target. His current whereabouts are unknown." There was a moment of heavy silence before the central figure spoke, their voice a genderless monotone. "Your actions saved countless timelines from corruption, Agent Kira. The Council commends your quick thinking and dedication to preserving the integrity of history." Kira nodded, but the praise felt hollow. She couldn't shake the image of Riven's altered face, the manic gleam in his cybernetic eyes. "Thank you, Counselor. But with all due respect, I don't believe this is over. Riven's abilities far exceeded anything we've encountered before. He's still out there, and I fear he'll try again." Another council member leaned forward, their chrono field rippling. "Do you have any theories on how he achieved such a state? Our preliminary scans showed massive temporal energy readings, but nothing that could explain the level of control you described." Kira hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I'm not certain, but based on what I saw, I believe Riven may have found a way to integrate his consciousness directly into the time stream itself. He seemed to exist in multiple moments simultaneously, able to perceive and manipulate time in ways that should be impossible." A murmur ran through the council, the first sign of emotion they'd shown. The central figure raised a hand for silence. "If true, this represents a grave threat to the stability of all timelines. Agent Kira, we're assigning you to lead a task force dedicated to tracking down and neutralizing Riven Blackthorne. You'll have full access to TTA resources. This is now our top priority." Kira's heart raced, a mix of anticipation and dread coursing through her. "Understood, Counselor. I won't let you down." As she turned to leave, the central figure spoke again. "One more thing, Agent. Given your history with the target, are you certain you can remain objective? We cannot afford any hesitation or misplaced loyalty." Kira's jaw clenched, but she kept her voice steady. Riven made his choice. Whatever we once were to each other, he's now a threat to everything we've sworn to protect. I'll do whatever it takes to stop him. The council member nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Very well, dismissed, Agent Kira, and good hunting." As Kira strode out of the council chambers, her mind was already racing with plans. She'd need a team, the best of the best, and she'd need to dig deeper into Riven's past, try to figure out where it all went wrong. The corridors of Kronos HQ were a hive of activity. Agents and analysts rushing back and forth as they monitored the countless timelines under their protection. Kira barely noticed them, her focus entirely on the task ahead. She made her way to the research division, a sprawling complex of laboratories and data centers. Here, some of the brightest minds in history worked to unlock the secrets of time itself, always pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Kira approached a workstation where a woman with wild, gravity-defying hair was furiously typing on multiple holographic keyboards. "Dr. Quanta," Kira called out, "I need your help." The scientist spun in her chair, her eyes magnified to comical proportions behind thick glasses. "Agent Kira, how delightful to see you. Have you come to assist with my latest experiment? I'm on the verge of proving that time is actually shaped like a Mobius strip made of spaghetti." Despite the gravity of the situation, Kira couldn't help but smile. Dr. Astra Quanta was brilliant, if more than a little eccentric. "Maybe another time, Doctor. Right now I need everything you have on chrono-integration, specifically the theoretical possibility of merging human consciousness with the time stream itself." Dr. Quanta's eyes widened even further, if that was possible. "Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, you're not talking about the Omega Protocol?" Kira frowned. "The what?" The scientist glanced around furtively, then beckoned Kira closer. In a stage whisper that was probably louder than her normal voice, she said, "The Omega Protocol. It's only a theory, mind you. Well, more of a thought experiment, really. A what-if scenario that keeps temporal physicists awake at night, questioning the very nature of our existence and our place in the grand tapestry of space-time." "Doctor," Kira said, trying to keep the impatience out of her voice, "please, just tell me what it is." Dr. Quanta took a deep breath. "The Omega Protocol is the hypothetical endpoint of temporal manipulation technology, a state where an individual becomes so attuned to the flow of time that they essentially become one with it, able to perceive all of history simultaneously, to exist at any point in the timeline at will. In theory, such a being would be, well, godlike in their power over reality itself." A chill ran down Kira's spine. It fit perfectly with what she'd seen Riven do. "And has anyone ever achieved this state?" The scientist shook her head vigorously. "Oh, goodness, no. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical. And the psychological toll of perceiving all of time at once? It would drive a normal person mad in an instant. No, it's purely theoretical. A mathematical curiosity, nothing more." Kira's mind raced. If Riven had somehow found a way to implement the Omega Protocol, the danger was even greater than she'd feared. "I need everything you have on this, Doctor. Every scrap of research, every wild theory. And I need it yesterday." Dr. Quanta blinked. "Well, technically, with the right calibration of the chronotransporters, we could send the data back in time to yesterday." "Figure of speech, Doctor." Kira cut her off. "Just as soon as possible, please." As Dr. Quanta bustled off to gather the requested information, Kira's wristcom buzzed. A message from her old friend and fellow agent, Talon Frost. "Hey, Kay, heard about the Riven situation. Need backup?" Kira smiled. Talon had always had impeccable timing. She quickly tapped out a reply. "You read my mind? Meet me in the armory in 10. We're putting together a team." With one last glance at Dr. Quanta, who was now buried under a mountain of holographic data files, Kira headed for the armory. Her mind was already assembling the pieces of the puzzle, trying to anticipate Riven's next move. The armory was a vast chamber filled with rows upon rows of temporal weaponry and defensive gear. Kira nodded to the AI attendant as she entered. making her way to the high-security section where the most advanced prototypes were kept. Talon was already there, his tall, lean frame leaning against a rack of chrono rifles. His silver hair was cropped short, and a thin scar ran down the left side of his face, a souvenir from a mission gone wrong in the Jurassic period. "So," he said by way of greeting, "Riven's gone full supervillain, huh? Can't say I'm surprised. Guy always did have a messiah complex." Kira sighed, running a hand through her short, dark hair. "It's worse than that, Tal. He somehow merged with the time stream itself. We're dealing with a whole new level of threat here." Talon whistled low. "Well, shit. That complicates things. What's the plan?" "First, we need to track him down," Kira said, her eyes scanning the weapons racks. "Then, I don't know. We've never dealt with anything like this before. We might have to improvise." "My favorite kind of mission," Talon grinned, but Kira could see the concern in his eyes. "Who else are you bringing in?" Kira tapped her wrist comm, bringing up personnel files. "I'm thinking Nova Chen for tech support. Nobody's better at hacking temporal systems, and we'll need a heavy hitter. Maybe Zephyr Blaze?" Talon nodded approvingly. "Solid choices. But you know we're going to catch hell for this, right? Riven was one of our own. The brass is going to want answers." "Let them ask," Kira said grimly, selecting a new model of temporal disruptor from the rack. "Right now, all that matters is stopping Riven before he tears reality apart." As they geared up, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that they were preparing for more than just a mission. This was a turning point, not just for her, but for the entire concept of time itself. "Tal," she said, her voice low, "if we can't stop him, if Riven really has become some kind of time god." Talon placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. "Then we'll find a way to deal with that too, one step at a time, Kay. First, we find him." Kira nodded, taking a deep breath to center herself. She strapped on the new disruptor, feeling its weight against her hip. "All right, let's move." They met Nova and Zephyr in the Chrono transport chamber. Nova, a petite woman with neon blue hair and more piercings than Kira could count, was already tapping away at a holographic interface. Zephyr, built like a mountain and about as talkative, simply nodded in greeting. "All right, team," Kira said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "Our target is Riven Blackthorne, former TTA agent. He's undergone some kind of transformation that's given him unprecedented control over time itself. Our primary objective is to locate and contain him. If that proves impossible, we take him down by any means necessary." She looked each of them in the eye, seeing determination reflected back. "This isn't going to be like any mission we've run before. We're in uncharted territory here. Watch each other's backs, and if anyone sees an opportunity to end this quickly, take it. Questions?" Nova raised a hand. "Yeah, quick one. If this guy can control time, how exactly are we supposed to fight him? Isn't he basically omnipotent?" Kira grimaced. "Theoretically, yes, but from what I saw, there are limits to his power. He's not all-knowing or all-powerful, at least not yet. Our job is to make sure he doesn't get the chance to become that." With no further questions, the team stepped onto the Chrono transport platform. Kira input the coordinates for their first destination, the ruins of Alexandria, circa 48 BCE. "Why there?" Talon asked as the machine hummed to life around them. "It's where Riven and I had our first mission together," Kira explained. "If he's trying to reshape history, it's as good a place to start as any." The world dissolved into a swirl of light and energy. When it reformed, they found themselves standing amidst the chaos of a city under siege. Smoke filled the air, and the sound of battle echoed in the distance. "Spread out," Kira ordered. "Look for any signs of temporal manipulation. And be careful. We don't want to change history ourselves." They moved through the burning city, their advanced tech allowing them to pass unseen by the panicked inhabitants. Kira's heart raced as memories of that first mission flooded back. She and Riven, young and idealistic, thinking they could save the great library from destruction. A scream cut through her thoughts. Kira spun, disruptor raised, to see a figure standing atop a nearby building. Even from a distance, she recognized the glowing blue eyes. "Riven!" she shouted. "It's over! Come in peacefully and we can fix this!" His laughter echoed unnaturally, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "Fix it! Oh, Kira!" I'm already fixing everything." The air around Riven shimmered, and suddenly the fires consuming the city began to flicker and rewind. Buildings reassembled themselves, people undied, the entire siege playing out in reverse. "My God," Nova whispered, "his rewriting history in real time." Kira's mind raced. If Riven succeeded in preventing the destruction of Alexandria, the ripple effects through time would be catastrophic. "Take him down," she ordered, firing her disruptor. The team sprang into action. Zephyr launched himself at Riven with superhuman speed, while Nova worked furiously on her portable console, trying to disrupt whatever temporal field Riven was generating. Talon provided covering fire, his chrono rifle spitting bolts of energy that distorted time around their target. But Riven was always one step ahead, existing slightly out of sync with the present. He danced between their attacks, his movements leaving trails of temporal afterimages. "You don't understand," Riven called out as he effortlessly dodged Zephyr's massive fists. "I can make it all better. No more suffering, no more loss." Kira gritted her teeth, lining up another shot. "And who gets to decide what better means, Riven? You? Playing God never ends well." For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of doubt cross Riven's face. But then his features hardened and he raised his hands. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp around him. "I'm sorry, Kay," he said, his voice oddly gentle. "But I can't let you stop me." Time fractured. Kira found herself experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously. In one, she was still in Alexandria. In another, she was back at the TTA Academy, young and full of hope. In yet another, she was an old woman, filled with regret for a life of what-ifs. Through the chaos, she heard her team crying out in confusion and pain. They were being torn apart by the temporal maelstrom, their very existence threatened by Riven's power. Kira focused, drawing on every ounce of her training and willpower. She pushed through the conflicting timelines, forcing herself back to the present moment. Her disruptor felt heavy in her hand, the weight of history itself bearing down on her. She saw Riven, his form flickering between past, present, and future versions of himself. For a split second, their eyes met, and Kira saw the man she had once loved. Brilliant, idealistic, and terribly, tragically flawed. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and pulled the trigger. The disruptor fired, its energy amplified by the fractured timelines surrounding them. The bolt struck Riven squarely in the chest, and for a moment, everything froze. Then, with a sound like reality itself tearing, Riven's form began to unravel. He reached out towards Kira, his expression a mix of anger, fear, and, just at the end, understanding. "Kira," he said, his voice echoing across time and space. "I only wanted to make things right." And then he was gone, scattered across the time stream like dust in the wind. The fractured timelines snapped back into place. Kira found herself on her knees in the burning streets of Alexandria. Her team sprawled around her, dazed but alive. Talon was the first to recover, crawling to Kira's side. Is it over?" Kira stared at the spot where Riven had been, feeling a hollow ache in her chest. "Yeah," she said softly. "It's over." As they gathered themselves and prepared to return to their own time, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that they had only delayed the inevitable. Time was vast and complex, and there would always be those who sought to control it. But for now, history was safe. The great library of Alexandria burned, as it was meant to. And somewhere in the vast expanse of the time stream, Kira hoped that Riven had found the peace he was looking for. Back at Kronos HQ, the debriefing seemed to last for days. The Temporal Council was shaken by how close they had come to total chrono collapse. New protocols were put in place. Security measures tightened. Through it all, Kira felt a growing sense of disillusionment. She had joined the TTEA to protect history, to ensure the natural flow of time. But who decided what was natural? How many tragedies had they allowed to unfold in the name of preserving the timeline? As she stood on the observation deck, watching the swirling vortex of the time stream, Kira made a decision. She couldn't change the past, her own or anyone else's. But the future was still unwritten. She turned to find Talon standing behind her, a knowing look in his eyes. "So," he said, "where do we go from here?" Kira smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think it's time we found out." Together, they walked towards an uncertain future, leaving behind the rigid structures of the TTEA. They would find a new way to protect time, not by enforcing a single predetermined path, but by nurturing the infinite possibilities that every moment held. As they prepared to make their first unsanctioned jump, Kira felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. The time stream stretched out before them, vast and full of potential. "Ready?" Talon asked, his hand hovering over the activation switch. Kira took a deep breath, thinking of Riven, of all they had lost and learned. "Ready," she said. And with that, they leapt into the unknown, becoming not enforcers of time, but its guardians and explorers. The future, all possible futures, awaited.